there's a group in the State House that wants to undo all of that great progress I just talked about. You know, one of the reasons I believe we've done so well is we've created a stable regulatory and tax environment for businesses and families in Louisiana. We've said we're not going to change the rules once you invest here, once you move here. You know what to expect. I made a commitment, as long as I'm governor, we're not raising taxes in our state. Yet, unbelievably, there's a group in the House. Earlier this week, on Monday, we thought they had a $500 million secret plan to raise taxes. Passed over half a dozen bills out of the Ways and Means Committee. Not even the members of the committee knew what the plan was going to be. They were told, don't worry about it, we'll have a plan by the time we get to the floor. So they voted on bills not knowing what the actual tax increases were going to be. I said it Monday at a press conference, and Dan and Greg were there saying this could be up to a $500 million tax increase on our families and businesses. Late Monday night, we found out it wasn't a $500 million tax increase. It was a $1.3 billion tax increase over the next 4 years. And I want to publicly thank Dan and Greg, because we immediately put out the alert and said, we need to take this seriously. We need to call our legislators. We need to remind them why raising taxes would be a mistake. And I want to just share with you just a few of the details in this plan that has come out, and just to share with you why this would be such a mistake for Louisiana. First, almost every business, almost every industry would have to pay more than $570 million in increased taxes due to higher taxes on non-residential utilities and manufacturing machinery and equipment. One of the first things we did in 2008 was to get rid of those taxes, to level the playing field, to encourage investment in our state. Now this group wants to take us backwards. The next thing they'd want to do is raise taxes $6 million on the manufacturing industry. Next thing they want to do is tell businesses that have gone through some hard times, we're going to increase your taxes by $180 million because we're going to change the way we treat net operating loss deductions. Now think about that. Louisiana would be one of the only states, we'd be the only state in the country that would do that. I don't know about you, but I grew up here. Whenever you hear Louisiana is the only state that does something in its government, that's usually not a good thing. We're the only state with Cajun food and culture and language, that's great. We're the only state with a great LSU baseball team and football team, that's great. But whenever you hear the politicians in Baton Rouge are about to do something that only Louisiana is going to do, that's not usually a good thing. What message does that send to companies across the world thinking about investing right here? The next thing this would do is absolutely impact the petrochemical industry, the chemical industry, more than almost any other industry. Tens of billions of dollars of projects have been announced. Tens of thousands of new jobs, even more construction jobs have already been announced. And you think about what would happen if they were to change the rules, raise these taxes, some of these retroactively. It's not just the sales taxes on utilities, on MM&E. It's also retroactively increasing taxes on things like net operating losses. It's also many companies in this room would retroactively see tax increases in programs like the Enterprise Zone and the Quality Jobs. Many companies in this room made decisions based on the laws, the taxes, the regulations that were in place at that time. It makes no sense to change the rules now that companies have made commitments to create good-paying jobs for our people. It's called bait and switch. And in the private sector, by the way, a lot of these things would absolutely be unconstitutional. You can't abrogate a contract after you sign it. You can't go to a company or you can't go to another party and say, oh, never mind. I mean, how would that be if you went to the store, bought some goods, came home, and then went back to the store and said, I know I've consumed the goods I bought. I've decided I'm not paying the bill anymore. Good luck trying to do that in the real world. You shouldn't be able to do it in the private sector, and your government shouldn't be able to do it as well. You take the Sasol project. One of the most exciting projects. I think it's going to revolutionize Southwest Louisiana in terms of the economy. I think it's going to have a huge impact in terms of our energy policies, just a tremendous impact for our entire state and our entire country. $16 to $21 billion. One of the incentives we used was a competitive projects payroll incentive. The legislators would take that away for up to 3 years. Postpone that. Just take away that incentive after we've already signed the deal. But it's not just Sasol. Look at CenturyLink. They've made a commitment to add over 1,000 headquarter jobs in Monroe. Based again on a commitment from the state, this retroactive tax increase would cause the state to be in default on that contract. Look at Procter & Gamble in central Louisiana. Look at IBM here in Baton Rouge. Look at EA in Baton Rouge. Look at Lockheed Martin over in New Orleans. It's companies in every industry across the entire state that would be impacted by these retroactive and harmful tax increases. Now, The news we've got today, you may have seen in the papers today, well, this group is regrouping. Legislators have heard from you and us and others, this doesn't make sense. We hear they're trying to make tweaks, trying to make minor modifications, try to get the votes they need. Now's not the time to let up. I came here in part to say thank you to Greg and to Dan, but also to each and every one of you, because your voices carry weight in the Capitol. These stickers you're wearing carry weight in the Capitol. So it is good that they're regrouping, but make no mistake about it. There are still folks that haven't given up the fight that are still looking to make minor modifications to sneak this tax increase through. We've got to be vigilant, we've got to be loud, and we've got to make sure they understand the negative consequences of going backwards. We don't need to go back. Just to put this in perspective, this would be the largest tax increase since the 1980s that we have seen in Louisiana. We don't need to go back to the 1980s when the bumper sticker said, "Would the last person turn the lights out when you leave Louisiana?" That's not what we need to do in this state. Louisiana, whenever we faced any challenges, economic or budget, in years past we would always raise taxes or expand gambling. We're doing something different. For the last 5 years, we've held the line. We've not raised taxes. We said we've got to live within our means. We've said we want to grow the private sector economy, not the government economy. And we've got to send a message to the legislature, not only to beat back these taxes, but to send a message. We don't want to go back to the same old politics that used to be the norm in Louisiana. My commitment to you is I'm going to stand with you. I've told the legislature I will veto any tax increases. $1 is a dollar too much for me. I'll veto any budget spending that's tied to tax increases. I'm not going to allow them. We're going to do everything we can to fight with you to stop these tax increases. But I'm also here to tell you we need your help to beat these back. And I'm also here to tell you as long as I'm governor of our great state, I'll continue to work with you because I understand how valuable this industry is personally as well as for the millions of people I'm privileged to serve as the governor of this great state. So I came here to thank you for the great jobs you have created, came here to thank you for the great jobs you're on the verge of creating in our state, but also to tell you this. Let's not be complacent. We've got 4.5 weeks left in this session. Let's wear these stickers proudly. Let's let our elected representatives and senators know. Email them, call them, let them know. Don't take this for granted. Let's let them know. Now would be the worst time to raise taxes in the state of Louisiana. Let's create those private sector jobs so that our children and grandchildren move back. I'm looking forward to seeing my nieces and my nephew come back to Louisiana so I can watch them play baseball and soccer on one of these beautiful Sundays. I'm going to steal this sticker. I'm going to go wear it at the Capitol. I need to get back to work. But thank you for what you're doing for Louisiana, and thank you for creating such great paying jobs in this great state. God bless you all. Thank you all very much.
First of all, in terms of tax increases, as the governor said so well, we can talk about what you call things, but if you have the same operations next year, the same sales, the same costs as you had this year, and you pay more taxes, that's a tax increase. But what this plan has proposed is an increase in taxes for fiscal year 14 alone of just under $330 million. 95% of that, approximately 95% of that would fall in business and industry in our state. It would propose an increase in corporate income and franchise tax collections of nearly 50%. The biggest impact in terms of where the biggest tax increases would be felt would be chemical plants, refineries, paper mills, basically the major manufacturers that would be most sensitive to an increase in sales taxes on manufacturing machinery and equipment as well as business utilities. That's a major, major part. In fact, the single biggest part of the, it's a $500 million package altogether, but roughly half of the tax increase is those two things, increasing the sales tax on manufacturing machinery and equipment, increasing the sales tax on business utilities. At the state level, we would be forced to break many existing incentive contracts. Many of you have enterprise zone contracts, you have quality jobs contracts. I don't think the authors of this plan realize that if you cut 15% of all the incentives, you're not cutting future projects, you're cutting the projects that have already been built. I mean, all the costs that we will experience as a state in fiscal year 14, nearly 100%, will be associated with projects that are being built this year. You know, you get the credit sort of after the fact, and I don't know that the authors necessarily realize that. Obviously, big impact on small businesses. significant increase in tax burdens across the state. But really the thing that upsets me the most beyond just the tax increase is the fact that we would be in a position to be forced to renege on existing commitments we've made to many of the companies in the room and many other companies around the state. Now, I think the business community, LABI, LCA, Forestry Association, the chambers around the state, a lot of folks have come out against this and are continuing to make great efforts against it. But I would just ask everyone in this room, if you haven't talked to the legislators you know personally in the House, again, this is starting in the House, please talk to them. I mean, they started this with a 2/3, veto-proof majority of the legislature. If we can't get that down below 2/3, this thing potentially could sail through the process. So I'm probably sharing, Dan, maybe more than you wanted me to. But long story short, there's nothing in that plan that's good for industry in the state. I certainly can respect their point about one-time money. Let me just say a word about that. Essentially, as the governor said, it is kind of simple. They have three choices. They can take the budget that was proposed that does use some one-time money. They can raise taxes, which is what they've proposed to do, or they can actually cut the budget. But I want to be clear that even the taxes they're raising, they're not saying that they're going to increase funding for health care, increase funding for higher education. They would be increasing taxes to avoid using money the state already has available in other places. So the governor's point is just simple. Look, let's don't raise taxes. If you don't want to use the one-time money, then cut the budget. And we're certainly prepared to do that. Anyway, long story short, I'm just very concerned about it. I'm very concerned, most important, not most importantly, but in my job as kind of the chief salesperson for Louisiana, I'm very concerned about this sort of being a reversal of so much progress that we've made. I mean, for us to go up, have the reputation we built as a state over the last 5.5 years, this could really push that back several years in one fell swoop. I'm concerned not just about final passage of this. I'm concerned that if it even gets out of the House, it becomes a Wall Street Journal story. We have other projects that boards start to worry about it. Literally, I don't want to call out any specific companies, but we've already gotten, I got this morning on my way over an email from one of our biggest projects where they're concerned about getting, how can they make sure that everything's locked in the way that the state committed when their board, made that decision. Some of the members of the House have proposed a budget plan that would raise taxes by about $330 million next year, well over $1 billion over the next 3 years. That would have a particularly detrimental impact on the chemical industry because roughly half of the new taxes are an increase in sales taxes on manufacturing machinery and equipment and on natural gas and business utilities. Those are two major inputs for this industry. So a lot of the good things that we see coming could actually go away if that budget plan passes.
And what about the impact on potential jobs that could become the potential deals?
Well, we would obviously have to try to renegotiate some of the projects we've already announced. Essentially, we'd have to renege on the commitments that the state made to attract some of these major projects. Additionally, for new projects that we're competing for, we have about 60 active competitive projects that we have specific proposals out to. We're going to have to update those proposals, let them know the legislature has increased taxes, reduced incentives, and we're going to have to make different proposals to them. That's obviously going to have a very negative impact on the likelihood of us being successful in securing those projects.
And what does that do for the state's reputation and also the national publicity that would follow?
Well, it would hurt us. It would hurt us badly. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a tremendous improvement in Louisiana's business climate rankings. We've moved up to our highest position ever on all of them, every single one. This would make us go in the other direction, and that would be a very sad thing to see.
There are certain provisions of that bill that will hurt this growth. This bill puts taxes on some of those things that help build our industry, and it will be a disincentive to that growth. And some of this growth that's planned might not come because of this increase in taxes. And so we are talking to our legislators about that, not trying to pick a fight, but simply pointing out to our friends that this is not a good idea and that it should be rethought and it should be ditched before companies that made commitments to come here decide that they shouldn't come because the rules of the game have been changed in the middle of the game.